I had heard what sounded like firecrackers.
Had you ever heard that sound before?
No. No.
Do you know how many firecrackers you heard?
I would guess 5 or 6.
What did you do when you heard the noises?
I got up from my desk and walked towards the doorway of my office to see what the noise was.
Now, at this point, was Mr. Hickson still with you?
Yes, he was.
And when you got to the doorway of your office, what did you see?
I saw a coworker, Snehal. She's in the cubicle right across the hall from me. She had stood up as well to look around to try and see what was going on.
Were you able to observe her face?
Yes.
Can you describe her demeanor or appearance at that time?
She was confused.
Did you ever change your gaze from Snehal to another location in the office?
No.
Okay, so after you saw Snehal, what did you do?
Well, at some point, I saw Ed Severino run past my office door in a crouched position.
And could you see Mr. Severino's face?
Just the side of his face.
Where were you when he ran past you?
I was in my doorway of my office, maybe a couple of steps back from the doorway.
If I were to show you the office layout, could you show us where Mr. Severino ran?
Yes.
Referring to State's Exhibit 10. Which direction did he go?
He was running in this direction, and he ran to the corner going that way.
Did you see him go any further than that, or did you lose sight of him at that point?
I lost sight of him at that point.
What did you do after you saw Mr. Severino take off?
Well, at some point I figured out something was wrong at that point. And I guess I must have understood that the firecracker noises I was hearing were gunshots. And by the look on Ed Severino's face, I knew that something was wrong. So I made a decision as to whether I was going to run or stay.
And how did you make that decision?
Well, Mr. Hickson was still in my office. He was in the very back of my office. And judging by the noise, where the noises were coming from, the firecrackers, which were gunshots, were coming from, I felt that if I wouldn't be able to grab Farrell and bring him out, and if I did, we might be right in the line of fire of the shooter.
What direction did you think the gunshots were coming from?
I thought they were coming from more of the interior of the office. I thought that the gunshots were coming from this general area of the office.
The direction of reception?
Yes.
So you didn't think you could get out, so what did you do?
So I closed the door to my office. I told Farrell that something's going on and to get down. And I got on the floor and put my shoulder against the door to barricade the door.
Did your door have a lock from the interior?
No.
Did closing your door provide complete safety within your office?
No.
Why not?
Right adjacent to the door is about a 4-foot by 4-foot glass window.
Did you see, or were you able to see where Mr. Hickson positioned himself?
Yes, he was on the floor, kind of underneath my desk. The layout of my particular office, I had a desk kind of in the middle of the office, and then on the back wall was another desk area, which is where my computer was. He was under that area trying to hide as best as he could.
If you can estimate how long it took for you to go to the door of your office and then position yourself behind the door, what period of time are we talking about?
Less than a minute.
Are you hearing any further gunshots while you're making this decision and positioning yourself?
I don't recall hearing other gunshots at that time.
So now you're behind the door. What happens next?
Okay. When I'm behind the door, I do hear shots.
Additional shots?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that you heard shots, there was a break, and then you heard further shots?
Yes.
So were you actually listening for the shots?
Listening, I mean, I couldn't help but hear them.
Okay. The second set of shots, were they moving or were they stationary, or could you tell?
It was difficult to tell, but I believe that they were coming towards where I was.
Did you hear any other noise within the office?
No. Yes, please. Going down this hallway, I hear other shots being fired.
Sort of down the hallway around the U of the office.
Yes.
Do you remember how many?
I will guess somewhere around 3, 4, 5.
All moving away at that time.
Yes. I also became aware a little bit later on them coming back, and I believe I heard additional shots that sounded like they were coming closer.
In your direction.
Yes,
And that's before you became aware that someone was directly outside your office.
that's correct. The second time, correct.
Now, you still can't see anything outside in the office space itself, correct?
Correct.
How did you become aware that someone was outside your office?
I felt pressure again. I think I heard the doorknob turn again, and this time I wasn't able to resist the pressure, and the door opened by about an inch or so, and I quickly was, closed it again.
Were you able to see anybody or anything outside that small crack in the door?
No, I don't know that it even opened enough to make a crack in the door. But if it did, I wouldn't have been able to see out from where I was.
And where was Mr. Hickson?
He was in the same spot.
So between the first time the person was outside and the second, did he ever reposition himself within your office?
I think he must have, because the second time his head was to my left, as I look back into my office from the doorway. So his head is on the left side and his feet are on the right side of me.
But he's in the same general location?
Yes, correct.
What happened after the door came open and you pushed it back shut?
A very short time after that, a gunshot shattered the entire 4-foot by 4-foot glass window.
And did you hear the gunshot itself?
Yes.
What did you see, if anything, within your office after you heard the gunshot?
I heard Farrell scream. And that's kind of it. There was just a shot, Farrell scream, and then I was waiting for something else to happen, but he didn't come. The shooter didn't come through the door or through the glass or the window that was shot out.
After Mr. Hickson screamed, did you observe him?
Mr. Hickson?
Yes.
Yes.
What was he doing?
He was stationary, prone on the ground, on the floor.
Motionless?
Yes.
Could you hear where the shooter was after the shot?
Yes, because with the glass on the carpet, I could hear his footsteps on the crunch of the glass.
And could you tell which direction they were headed after the shot?
I think they were headed down that hallway, the second hallway there. I can point to it if you'd like.
Yes.
But I'm not 100% sure of that. I think he went that way, but I could not be certain of that.
And you're talking about directly away from the window in your office, around the U shape of the office, not towards reception.
Correct.
Okay. While I'm here, were you familiar with an employee named Rafael Velasquez?
Yes.
And where was Mr. Velasquez's office?
His office is right here.
So that would only be 2 offices down from yours and the far side from reception.
Correct?
And when Mr. Rodriguez worked in your office in 2007, Mr. Velasquez's office would have been right next door to his. Is that right?
That is right.
What happened after you heard the shooter walking away? You've said Mr. Hickson is motionless, and you hear the person walking away.
There's not a whole lot immediately following that. It's a lot of quiet. I think I hear sirens. At some point, I understand that Farrell is still living because he must have made a noise or moved or something.
And what did you do in response to him moving?
We tried to, or we did move my bookcase so that he could get behind it. With his leg being shot, he wasn't able to do that very well, but that was one thing that we did. We didn't know if the shooter was coming back or if there were more than one shooter, so we were just kind of laying low, waiting for the police.
And at any point during this event, did you see the person who fired the shots?
No.
That day, did you have any idea who it was?
No.
At some point, you end up leaving your office, is that right?
That's right.
How did that come about? How did you know it was safe to go out?
I'd heard somebody walk by the office because, again, I heard the crunch of the glass. And then I heard it, and then those steps went away, and then I heard them again, and I later learned that was Ken Van Velzen.
And who is Ken Van Velzen as far as RS&H goes?
He is the IT leader for the office.
And he was that in 2009 and currently, is that right?
That is correct.
So you find out that Ken is walking around, Mr. Van Velzen?
Yes.
Okay. Then what did you do?
He saw me through the shot-out window, and I saw him through the window as well, so we opened the door. We helped Farrell into the computer room that has a lock in it, and I went with him in that room.
Did you remain with Mr. Hickson until law enforcement arrived?
Yes.
And how was it that you ended up getting out of the Gateway Center?
Ken came with law enforcement. We put Farrell in a chair. Ken pushed him out to the elevators. I walked with him, and we went down to the lobby.
At that point, you had contact with law enforcement and all that stuff?
Yes.
No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Mr. Glenn, to the best of your memory, and from what you've said today, is it correct to say that you were never a supervisor or manager for Jason Rodriguez?
That is correct.
And to the best of your knowledge, Farrell Hickson was never a manager or supervisor for Jason Rodriguez?
Correct.
And tell me if you know this or not, in the time that Jason Rodriguez worked for RS&H, was he always located on the 8th floor, or were there other locations where RS&H employees would be?
Yes, for a time, I believe Jason and others may have been located on the 9th floor, if my memory serves correctly.
Okay. And you indicated that you believe that by 2007 or so, that Jason Rodriguez and Rafael Velasquez had offices or cubicles next to each other. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And that was around the corner from where your office was?
That is correct.
Okay. No further questions.
Redirect?
No, Your Honor.
May the witness be excused.
He is excused by the state, yes.
Thank you, sir. You may be excused. State may call the next witness.
The state called Nicole Jeffers.
Good morning. Raise your right hand and face the flag.
You solemnly swear the testimony you should give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, could you please tell us your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Nicole Jeffers, Jeffers.
And Ms. Jeffers, in which city do you live currently?
Orlando,
And how long have you lived in Orlando?
10 years. No, sorry, since 2000. Apologize.
13 years.
13 years.
And what is your current occupation?
I'm a transportation engineer.
And who is your employer?
Reynolds Smith and Hills,
And how long have you been employed with Reynolds Smith and Hills?
10 years.
And what are your duties as a transportation engineer?
I do all aspects of transportation design, highway design, sidewalks, bike paths, project management.
And how long have you worked within the transportation group at RS&H?
For 10 years.
All
the whole
10
time.
years in the same group.
Yes.
Now, when you worked at RS&H in 2006, 2007, did you know a coworker named Jason Rodriguez?
Yes.
And do you recall what group he worked in initially?
I believe he was part of the transportation department, I guess.
Okay.
He-
Now, when he joined RS&H, you were still in the transportation group, is that right?
Yes.
And who made up the transportation group at that time?
My supervisors were Renato Gonzalez and Jesse Forst. There was myself, James Beverly. I guess he was transportation, but with tolls, so he was a kind of a specialized part of the transportation group. Alex Paradis, Justin Barton, and Jason Rodriguez. I'm trying to recall who else.
About Elizabeth Bartel.
Yes, Elizabeth. Well, she's part of the water. Yes, she's with transportation. Elizabeth Bartel and Jeff Glenn, and they are the water resources division of the transportation group.
Okay. Was there a core younger group of transportation engineers at that time?
Yes.
And who were
Yes.
they?
Myself, Alex, Justin, Liz, or Elizabeth, and Jesse, I guess, would, even though he was our supervisor, he would, I don't know, he was younger as well, I guess. But
Did that group socialize outside the office?
yes, yeah.
Now, when Mr. Rodriguez became a part of the group, did he socialize with any of you outside the office?
No.
Do you know why that was?
I don't know if there was any reason in particular. He was a little bit older than us, probably a different point in his life. We were all young, single, didn't have children. And sometimes you click with people on a social level as coworkers, and sometimes it's just a coworker relationship, and you don't necessarily form an outside of work relationship.
Was your professional relationship with Mr. Rodriguez cordial?
Yes.
No
Yes.
problems?
No problems. I mean, we didn't interact on a daily basis, but if we always sat on opposite sides of the office. Our desks were never near each other, but when we would run into each other in the break room or something, it was always pleasant enough.
Now, Ms. Jeffers, I'd like to direct your attention to Friday, November 6th of 2009 at around 11:30 in the morning. Do you remember that morning?
Yes, I do.
Were you working in the offices that morning?
Yes.
And before we go any further, I've been referring to you as Jeffers. What was your name, your last name, in 2009?
It was Crawford.
Okay. So what were you doing around 11:30 that morning?
I was sitting at my desk working, and I had my headphones in, just facing my computer.
And if I were to show you a diagram of the office, could you show us where your office was?
Yes.
May I picture what instruction?
You may.
Referring to State's Exhibit 10. Ms. Jeffers, take a second to orient yourself, please.
Okay.
And can you show us where reception was?
Yes, reception's right here.
And is that where Maureen Daly sat?
Yes.
And where was your office?
My office is right here.
Now,
Third one in, third cube in.
on the outer wall and the interior of the office.
Yes,
And by interior, I mean not at the back of the office.
correct. Yeah.
Was it an office or a cubicle?
It was a cubicle.
Oh, okay, so you're sitting there listening to your headphones and working, is that right?
Yes.
And what was it that drew your attention to a problem in the office?
I all of a sudden heard two loud noises, and I didn't know what they were, so I started to take my headphones out because they were loud, but I couldn't distinguish what the noises were because they were muffled. But I knew something. They were too loud to have just been someone dropping a box or something, you know.
From where you were sitting with your headphones in, could you see outside of your cubicle?
I wasn't facing outside my cube. I was facing towards the window in my computer screen.
The outside wall?
Yes, the outside wall.
Okay, so after you hear the noise, what did you do?
I started to take my headphones out, or I took my headphones out, and as I stood up, started to look towards the front of the office, and all of a sudden I saw Keandra Harrison in the walkway between my cube and just outside of my cube, and she was kind of crouching or diving or falling. I'm not sure, but she wasn't just standing upright. And she said, "It's not a Halloween joke." And I heard that, and at the same time, I heard two more loud noises, which I realized were gunshots, and I just dove under my desk.
Could you tell from which direction the or the gunshots were coming?
Yes, they were at the front of the office.
Near reception?
Near reception, near the entrance to the office.
At that point, had you seen anybody except Keandra Harrison?
No.
And you dove back into your cubicle, and where did you go
Yes.
within your cubicle?
I hid kind of behind the filing cabinets that were right underneath my desk. And I just crouched under there.
Now, were you facing the wall or facing out once you were crouched under?
I was facing out, but I was looking at the filing cabinet. I couldn't actually see out of my cube. But I was facing out towards the walkway outside of my cube.
But you couldn't see?
No, I could not.
Could you hear anything at that point?
Yes, I continued. At this point, like I said, I realized it was gunshots because I could smell the gunpowder, and I continued hearing gunshots coming from the front area of the office, and they were getting closer, and I could hear gunshots in multiples of two. I kept hearing them in multiples of two, and it felt like they were getting closer to my area.
When you say multiples of two, can you further describe or even make the noise as you heard it?
Yes, it was, it was like bang, bang, and then there'd be a brief pause, and then bang, bang. It felt like it was like every two shots, it would get a little bit closer, and I could tell that they were getting closer to my area, and it felt like one cube at a time, that it almost felt like two shots were going into every cube, and every two shots, it would get closer.
You said you also heard footsteps again, is that right? Or did you hear footsteps? I'm sorry.
Yes, so I heard, as the gunshots continued getting closer to my area, I could hear footsteps, and then they continued past my area. The gunshots continued further back into the office, and the footsteps continued further back into the office. And after a while, I couldn't hear gunshots anymore, and then I started hearing heavy footsteps coming back towards my cube, and I could tell again that they were in the walkway just outside of my cube.
Could you from where you were and what you heard, could you tell the pace of the footsteps as they moved back towards your cube?
It sounded like a slow jog.
Was that any different than as they were when they were moving away?
Yes, I'm sorry, when they were coming, I mixed it up. When they were coming into the office, getting closer to me, it was slower. It was a walk. It was a much slower progression back into the office, further into the office, than on the way back. When I heard someone coming back past the cube, when I was no longer hearing gunshots back towards the front of the office, that was a jog. That was a slow jog.
Okay, and you said they approached your cube for a second time.
Yes.
Did they stop at your cube or keep going?
They did not stop the second time. I don't know the first time. I couldn't see out.
Did you hear any more gunshots after the steps went past your cube the second time as they traveled back towards reception?
No.
Did you immediately come out of your cube?
No. I stayed under my cube, not for a long time, but at least a minute or two after the steps went by. And then I didn't hear anything. And after I hadn't heard anything for a minute or two, I, at that point, kind of came out of my cube and I started to kind of peek around to see if I could see anything.
Did you see anything when you got out?
Not immediately. I didn't see anything right when I stood up, but I started to walk towards kind of the front of the office back, I guess to leave, I don't know. And I was looking around and I peeked in Renato Gonzalez's office, which is towards the front of the office, and I saw Keandra on the floor under
No.
his...
Was Renato Gonzalez in the office that day?
No, he actually at that time was working out of an office in DeLand, so it was previously his office, but no one else had moved into it, so I just always still think of it as his space, but he was not.
So if you walked past Renato Gonzalez's office, you're walking sort of towards reception from your cubicle.
Yes,
And when you got to the doorway of Renato Gonzalez's office, did you look inside?
yes.
And do you recall if the lights were on or off?
The lights were off. It was dark, but I saw Keandra, and she just looked up at me, and she said she had been shot, and she didn't know what to do.
Where was she positioned when you saw her?
She was, I think she was laying on her back, but kind of pushed as far underneath his desk as she could be, so in the back corner of his office.
After you saw Keandra, what did you do?
After I saw Keandra, I ran back to my desk and got my cell phone and called 911.
And did you remain on the phone with 911 for some time?
I remained on the phone with 911 until the police came up to the office quite a bit later. I was on the phone with them for a long time.
Is it fair to say that while you were on the phone with 911, you were still scared?
Yes, just terrified.
So you're on the phone with 911, and are you doing anything else while you're on the phone?
I was on the phone at first. I kind of crouched back under my desk when I called them. And after I talked to them for a minute, I realized I couldn't leave Keandra where I needed to go check on her. So I came back out and went back up to Renato's office. And at that point, when I came back out the second time to go check on Keandra, Natalie Rodriguez, who sits another 2 cubes further into the office, she came out and she was going to leave the office, and I told her Keandra had been shot, so she came with me. And we tried to, she suggested we move Keandra and all of us go into the storage closet.
Okay, so at this point, I'm sorry to
So
interrupt you. At this point, it's you, Keandra, and Natalie Rodriguez.
Yes,
Was there anybody else that you saw walking around at this point?
not at this point.
Okay, and you decided to move Miss Harrison.
Yes.
Where did you decide to move her?
There's a storage closet across the walkway from, closer towards reception, but from Renato's office, and we thought we'd be able to lock ourselves in there.
And did you in fact move Miss Harrison to the closet?
Yes.
How
yes.
did you do that?
She was able to get up and hop over there, and we were able to, just kind of help get her over there. I was able to, but she was able to help move as well.
When you got to the closet, would the door lock?
No.
So what did you do with Miss Harrison once you got to the closet?
Once I went into the closet with Keandra and she laid back down, and I was able to get a look at the wound on her foot, the gunshot on her foot. I looked for something to tie around it. There was a construction vest was the only thing that was in there, so I tied that around her foot. And I believe she was also on the phone with paramedics. I don't know. I kind of got her situated, and then I stepped back out of the room for a second because Natalie hadn't followed us in there.
Was anybody else present at this point?
Not quite yet.
Okay. You stepped back out of the room for what purpose?
I guess to see where Natalie was, to see what was going on in the office, to see if anyone else had come out. And as I stepped out of the room and I looked up towards reception, Natalie was crouched down on the floor next to Otis.
Otis who?
Otis Beckford.
And this is in the reception area?
This is in the reception area, yes.
Could you see Mr. Beckford?
Yes, I
Was
could.
he moving?
No,
Did you see anybody else in reception?
no, just Natalie was down.
Where did you go after you saw that?
I think I just went back into the storage room. I went back into the storage room to check on Keandra, and she asked for her cell phone. I believe she wanted to call her brother, or her purse. So I ran back to her desk, which was right next to mine, or her cube, and I grabbed her purse for her and brought that back to the storage room.
At this point, did you know whether or not the front door to the office was open or locked?
We locked it at some point. I do recall around the same time, Ken Van Velzen came back in the front door of the office. And when Natalie was down by Otis and I had stepped out of the office, Ken came in the office, and at that point, we locked the front door, or he locked the front door.
Okay. Ms. Jeffers, you referred to calling 911 while you were conducting your activities within the office, is that right?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness what's been previously marked as State Exhibit J and shown to counsel?
You may.
Ms. Jeffers, I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit J. Do you recognize State's Exhibit J?
Yes.
And what do you recognize it as?
This is a CD with my 911 call.
Is it the entire 911 call or a shortened portion of it?
It's a shortened portion.
Your Honor, at this time, the State seeks, I apologize. Is it a fair and accurate depiction of your 911 call? Is this you on the phone?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, the State would seek to admit State's J as the next numbered exhibit.
What says the defense?
Defense would object, Your Honor.
We may approach, Judge.
Approach. Okay, objection will be overruled. It will be received in evidence as states numbered.
Under permission to publish State's 10 to the jury.
You may publish.
going to your place? I'm at the Gateway Center. You're on Legion Place, we have multiple calls on this. Do you know where the guy is that came in shooting? I do. Where is he, honey? I have no idea. Okay, do you want to talk to me on the phone? You can talk to me on the phone, okay? Because we have a lot of people coming there, okay? We have a lot of people coming. We have people that have called. Are you on, what floor are you on? Are you on the 8th floor as well? I'm on the 8th floor, and I don't know where I should go. No, I just want you to, where are you? I'm hiding under it. Whereabouts, honey? Okay, so I can let the police officers know, okay? So I can let them know. Well, you tell me where you're at. You're under a desk. Whereabouts on the 8th floor? 800? In suite 800. Uh-huh. And you can come, go ahead. They come in there, like 3 keys tonight, and one of our girls here has been shot. Okay, you have a victim with you as well? Yes, she's in an office next to me. Okay, if I transfer you to the paramedics, can you help them give first aid to this lady? Okay, will you be able to do that? What's your name? What's your name? My name is Nikki. She's on the phone too. They're on the phone too, Nikki? She's on the phone as well. She's on the phone with the fire department, with the paramedics? Yes. But you don't have any idea where this guy went? Okay, you want to stay on the phone with me for a minute? Thank you. Yeah, I want you to stay right where you're at, okay? Because we don't know where this guy is right now, okay? But I do know we got a lot of people coming over there, okay? Okay? Yeah. You're Nikki? Yes. Okay, just stay with me, okay? You just keep talking to me. Okay. Are you still talking to the paramedics? Yeah, we're trying to get into a room that locks. You're trying to get into a room that locks? Yeah, but we thought it locked still. Okay, the guy that did this, did you see him? No, he was in the shot at that. What, dear? As soon as I heard a gunshot, I called him with it. Okay, that's okay, you did the right thing. You did the right thing. You did absolutely the right thing. Yeah. Stay there. You just stay with me, okay? Okay. Just stay with me. You're okay, you're doing good. We're in suite 800, we're gonna hide in the closet on the left-hand side when we come inside. Hide in the closet in suite 800 on the left-hand side. Is that what you just told me? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna let him know that. I have. There's 2 other people in here watching now. What, honey? paramedics for the lady that shot? Still on the phone? Okay, you're still on the phone, that's good, that's good. I just wanna make sure you still have contact. Okay. You're doing wonderful. You are doing absolutely wonderful. You're a great help. You're helping, you're holding things together, okay? You're holding things together, I know. There you go. And then there's high up there, the superintendent talking about fire. And, she told me they're locked in a closet in 2800 on the left-hand side. Yeah, this house is it Gary that shot in the leg, honey? You don't, the guy you're with, honey? No, I'm with a lady. You're with a lady. Okay, what's the lady's name? Her name's Bianca. And where's she shot? Where, honey? On the top of her foot. I've got something tied around it right now. Okay. And she's locked in the suite with you, right? In the closet? I mean, there's no lock, but she's in there with the other people walking around in the office. Can you get them, can they come with you? Is anybody with an officer yet, No, there's no officer yet. Okay. And there's 3 people walking around in suite 800? Yeah. The other yeah, look, you're doing wonderful. You're doing wonderful. It's a real hard thing. Real hard. They're all over the place there, okay? They're all over the place. You're doing a wonderful thing. I'm here. Well, honey? There are officers all over the place, okay? There's multiple officers there. It's just taking them a little time to clear as they come up. Okay? Okay, we have multiple people shot on this floor. Okay. Not just the underwear, people who... Right, I understand that, because one of your co-workers took somebody in a car, and they were trying to get him to the hospital, but now they pulled over, so we have people going for that. Okay. I know, hon. How many people were shot there, baby? No, walk around, Hey, Vicky, you talk to me. My name's Joe. Okay, don't do this. You're being real strong for everybody around you, okay? Hey, okay, take a breath. Okay? They are in the building, baby, okay? They're just getting over to you, okay? It's just taking them a minute to get up there. Okay? I don't know. They're in the building and they're on the way. They're on the way up. They're in the building. They're on the way up to you. Yes. We have one down in the cook lobby. We have one spot in okay.
Ms. Jeffers, in the phone call, you referred to Ms. Harrison being shot once in the leg, is that right?
At the time, I did not realize that she had also been shot in the chest.
Were you present when that other gunshot wound was found?
I think I heard at some point, but it was, I believe Ken was checking on her when he came into the office and he found the other gunshot. She had a dark sweater on, and we couldn't see the blood, and she wasn't mentioning that. She kept mentioning the one on her foot, and that's the only one I found.
How did you become aware that law enforcement had arrived at the suite?
I could hear the dogs, the law enforcement dogs, and I could hear them announcing themselves that they were here, and at that point, I guess we opened the door.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Ms. Jeffers, in the testimony that you just gave a few minutes ago, you described hearing slow and heavy footsteps initially coming towards you, and then later you described them as a slow jog going back and away. But you said you never saw any shooter.
Correct.
So the jogging noise, you wouldn't know if that was the shooter exiting or if that was a coworker.
I did not see them. No, correct.
Okay. And do you recall doing an interview with the police in December of 2009 after this event?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall what you said with that interview?
I'm sure. Yes.
They at one point asked you about working with Jason Rodriguez shortly before he was fired in 2007. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And do you recall what you said about Jason Rodriguez's behavior around the time that he was fired?
Around the time that he was fired, he started acting a little strange in the office.
Was there something specifically strange about him?
He was carrying around a shoulder bag all the time, and he didn't say it to me, but I know he was saying something about a secret project he had in his shoulder, and that's why he had to carry it around. It was kind of hearsay through the office. I didn't interact with him much, but
it was, what you'd heard was that he described it as a secret project.
yes.
Ask and answer, Your Honor.
Overruled.
And do you recall anyone being concerned about his driving?
I do not recall the specific incident. I remember one of my coworkers, I believe before he had been fired.
Objection, Your Honor, it's been a call for this.
Ma'am, do not tell us an answer based upon what somebody else told you. If you can answer that question based upon your own personal knowledge, you can answer it. Can you answer that question based upon your own personal knowledge?
No.
Objection sustained.
And when you discussed with the police about Mr. Rodriguez carrying a shoulder bag with a secret project in it, you described that as weird, correct?
Correct.
And at that point, you chose to avoid him?
Yes, like we didn't work together on a day-to-day basis and didn't sit near each other, so just, I guess, had limited interaction.
All right, no further questions.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor.
May the witness be excused.
She is, Judge, by the state.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. You may be excused. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we will take our mid-morning recess until 5 minutes to the hour of 11. Please remember all of my previous instructions. We'll take a 15-minute recess. Thank you.
Jury exit.